Hey everyone, Brendan Sander here. How are you? Thanks so much for joining me, and welcome to another episode of New Music Finds, where I like to collect together all the things that I've purchased over the past week, present it to you guys. And if you've been paying attention to some of my other videos, then you know that I've been on vacation. I am off all this week here in the US. Monday was Labor Day. I took the other 4 days off, get a whole week off. So, of course, what have I been doing? Hitting up record stores. So I got a larger than average quantity of music here, 25 CDs to run through with you from various places, whether it be record stores, but also online retail like Amazon, eBay, and more. We'll get into it here in just a bit. But before we start, if you're new to my channel and you haven't already hit the subscribe button, please do. Also leave a comment, hit like, all those things do help support my channel. I'd greatly appreciate it. And of course, as an added bonus, if you turn on notifications, you're gonna stay up to date on everything going on in the world of music, just like this, with New Music Finds right here, right now. We'll get into it. Okay, so I like to kick off with new releases, but there really wasn't anything new from this past week that I was picking up, at least. There was the new release of the U2 EP, Zoo TV. I've got that on order though, but it's a Japanese, so I'm waiting for it to come in. But all these things that I have here, I've actually got four things that are from previous weeks. So one of these just came in the mail. Actually, a couple of them did. So haven't peeled into them just yet. But I talked to you guys about Devon Allman from the Allman Betts Band. Devon Allman being son of Greg Allman and his album here, Pink Moon. So new release. I talked about it during the What Just Dropped release when, actually it's called, sorry, Miami Moon. But it's pink in color, so it makes me think that every time. Should have been called Pink Moon. I talked to you guys about it during the What Just Dropped episode that I did for the week release when this came out. And it was more just a matter of, I know the name and I know the Allman Betts Band. And I thought, bring it to your attention. I listened to it and I was really pleasantly surprised. It's less of the blues, more of the rock, kind of on the southern rock side. It's a little hard to describe, but it just hit me just right. So anyways, in the end of the day, I decided to pick one up, and I was having trouble getting it through Amazon. So Anthony ordered me that one. And then this one I'd had on order since its release. Again, found it through putting together the episode of What Just Dropped for you guys. It's Honeymoon Suite, and it's their album Clifton Hill, but it says revisited because it's been remixed. And I've got the original copy of this album, and it never struck me very well at the time, at least. I mean, it was a good album, but it didn't really hit me as being anything fantastic. Not like their new one, their newest album that's out, which they did drop a new one this year. I loved right from the get-go. But this one here, with its remix, sounds really good. It's also a different track sequence, and so maybe it's the combination of the way that the tracks are ordered now, the remix on it, but all in all, very good. And it seems to be a very popular thing these days to do remixes. But Honeymoon Suite, revisiting, I think this album was originally 2008, around that time frame, and it's got two acoustic bonus tracks on it. So even if you had the original, there is something a little extra for you. And this one came out a little while back to Prog Collective, and it's called Dark Encounters. Might be like their fifth or sixth studio album. This is a project that Billy Shearwood, who's current member of Yes, he also plays in Asia, a lot of solo and side projects, the group Citizen, World Trade. But anyways, he just gathers up a bunch of progressive rock people, even some people on the metal side of things, and does these Prog Collective releases. And so we get people on here. We get Steve Stevens. He's not really prog, but he's on here. Steve Morse. We get David Cross, Ron Thal, Kasim Sultan, Greg Bissonette, Steve Hillage, Todd Zuckerman, Joe Bouchard. I mean, just list of people goes on. So very, very cool release. Whenever I'm in the mood for some prog and there's nothing dropping by like Yes, John Anderson, stuff like that, those are always good to fall back on. And then Bad Reputation Records reissued Child's Play, a glam metal band, their debut album, but they also included with it their second album. So the band only did two albums. Second album does have a different frontman, lead vocalist in it, and it was put out after sort of the heyday. I think this was 1990, and I think this is 1993. But here's the cool thing. Usually this would be in a slimline 2 CD case, but they actually did this as two separate albums, both in jewel cases. And I haven't opened it yet. I just got this also. Anthony ordered this for me, so I just picked these up, and I'm looking forward to diving into it. I always had this album, an original copy of it, and I'll certainly be keeping that. But I never had the follow-up album. I didn't even know they had a follow-up album until Bad Reputation went to release this package here. And then I was like blown away by it. And I thought it was just going to be a second disc because they've been doing that. And I get it. These second albums didn't really have any notoriety to draw additional people into those sort of things. Some of them are unreleased second albums. Black Eyed Susan, the Dean Davidson project that he did after Britney Fox, did a second album, Just a Taste, and it never got released. But if you buy the Black Eyed Susan Electric Rattlebone album, that second album is in there. It's just in the slimline case as the second disc. I would have loved had that been an actual second jewel case separated out like that. If I ever find out they're reissuing it that way, I will be picking that up again. So Bad Reputation Records, if you start reissuing those, Tesla you've done a 2-disc for, I forget who else is out there, Great White, I know you did the 2-disc for. If you break those apart, I'll buy them again, and probably other people. Okay, as I said, I was hitting up record stores and stuff, made it out to Music Connection, which is known for its hard rock and heavy metal, hit up Sound Exchange a couple times. Of course, they're filming with Anthony, but I'm always shopping when I'm there. So this is going to be a mix of stuff from that, and I got some stuff in from eBay too. So we're just going to run through it all now. First thing up, Thunderer. And this is a 2021 release by a trio here. Don't know much about them. I can't remember. I think these guys might be German. Can't remember. But this is one of those new wave of traditional heavy metal bands. So it's newer band today, sounding like the stuff from back in the day. The couple of the guys in here are from a band called Skullfist, and I've got something of theirs on order, and apparently that's where they're known from. This was a little side project they did as a throwback to the 80s. Fell in love with this. Now I'm going to check out the other stuff. I really like the guy's lead vocals in here. It's a unique sound and style to his vocals, which for me is always what separated out both glam metal and heavy metal music, was the vocal. Rock music tended to often have very, and I don't want to say run-of-the-mill, but very average, and that's not really a good term either, because I know we would say, oh, well, look at Robert Plant, look at Steven Tyler of Aerosmith, but I just mean there's more clean vocal style in the rock world than in heavy metal and glam metal. All right, moving on, because that's a whole different conversation for another time. Thelemite. Don't know if I'm saying that name right. That name and Thunderer. Not sure where they get the spellings of these things. There's another one in here too that's got an odd spelling. But newer band. And that was the thing. I had gone into newer sounding or newer bands with that newer modern sound that is a throwback though to the classic stuff. And if I can find it in here, wherever it ended up, there we go. I'm going to show you this one now. So it started with this. I was having a conversation with Anthony about Cobra and the Lotus, and he played this release here, Evolution, and I had not picked this one up. And so I came home and I pulled out some of my older Cobra and the Lotus stuff that had never really gelled with me at the time. I liked it, it was okay, but it didn't really gel with me. And I had seen Cobra and the Lotus open for Def Leppard and Kiss on their tour, which is why I bought some of their stuff. This really spoke to me, and then I went back and I pulled out the older Cobra and the Lotus stuff, and I really, really loved it. So then, of course, I wanted more stuff like that, which led me down the path of picking up these things. So that's where this came from. Again, a lot of these things I picked up this go-round, I don't know why, but were things that I had discovered through the What Just Dropped series that I post for you guys. because believe it or not, I don't know everything and all the releases. Sometimes I'm discovering it just like you guys on release day. But I remember those things, and then when I'm in the mood for that stuff, I can go back and pick it up. And that's what this release was. That's what this one was, Cobra Kill, which this one here, along with Thunder, fantastic. This is the only release that they have, but Cobra Kill has two. And so I've ordered the debut release off of eBay, couldn't get it through Amazon, but I got this here. And this is sort of a, they described themselves as glam metal throwback, but I would say it's more heavy metal than glam metal. But if you look at the guys, they definitely look glam metal on there, but it's, for me, has more of the heavy metal sound. Now, in terms of those bands with odd spellings, here is an Australian group called White Widow with two Ds instead of one D. So there you go. But this one here is more of the AOR melodic rock sounding style stuff than the glam metal, traditional metal, and so forth. But newer band, I decided to go ahead and pick this up. It's out of print. I'd seen this before at Sound Exchange, and I just kind of passed it by. Here's one of the newer metal bands, Cobra Spell 666. It is an all-female group, definitely in the metal, hard rock side of things, a little bit tongue-in-cheek. The opening track is 666. It's an instrumental, and then the second track is Sex. Then third track is Satan is a Woman. Fourth track, Hotline 666. So you can see it's a little, in my opinion, it's tongue-in-cheek. They're not doing it like, oh, we fully believe in this stuff. It's just that they're writing in the style of the era for which they are trying to represent, which is a throwback to the glam metal and heavy metal style of the 80s. And then look at the outfits itself. You know, again, that's the kind of stuff that you would have seen these girls wearing back in the 80s. So they're playing it up. But all in all, it's good heavy metal style music. Now, one that I stumbled upon that completely blew me away, and I just was off on a kick for trying to collect everything, was Mark Rizzo, the guitar player for Soulfly, Cavalera Conspiracy. I don't really know him much outside of that, but I've known the name for a long time, and I thought, let me check this out. And this release here blew me away. And there happened to be two at Music Connection, so I picked up guess what you'd call a greatest hits, a collection of stuff from his albums. This one here, Living Shred Volume 1, 11 tracks on there. But at Sound Exchange, I managed to find two more releases from him. So I think this one here is like 2004, this is like 2007, give or take. But he goes back, and of course, just look how young he is on the cover of these here. Still trying to figure out who he is, I guess. Of course, we know him today, like I said, more for Soulfly and Cavalera Conspiracy, and he might even be with Cavalera. I can't remember if he's part of that project or not, but these earlier albums, he mixes much more of the classical flamenco and then the heavy metal styles in there, kind of alternating back and forth, whereas this release here, which I think is a 2018 release, and the latest solo album that he did, is predominantly all of the metal style with some of that acoustic and flamenco style mixed into the middle of tracks, but where you don't get a whole track of that. So this here, far more consistent release. It's also a 45-minute release, whereas I know at least this album here is like full on 70, maybe even 80 minutes worth of music, where some of the songs are 9 and 10 minutes a piece. So this one here kind of ran on a little long for me, but I'll tell you what, if you're looking for some cool instrumental shred style guitar, Mark Rizzo, man, he really impressed me with that release there. And as I said, I was on a bit more of the heavy metal stylings for this past week, and so I had picked up newish release from Exodus, although it's an archival release called British Disaster, a live concert, archival concert that was a home video, finally getting a standalone album release. So I picked that up, and it is that kind of live concert that I like, which is the really loud audience. Those late 80s shows were really, really good for that sort of stuff. Whereas today there's far too much talking and background noise and stuff like that I often don't like it. But when I find a really good live show like that, I enjoy picking it up. But I also decided to go ahead and pick up jewel case editions of both of these albums. Impact is Imminent, and this one here, which is called Force of Habit. And I've had both of these on paper sleeve LP reproduction. I mean, they're the CD size LP reproduction style, but they're in those cardboard sleeves and they just don't go with anything. These are both remastered, and I wasn't expecting a lot from it. But I will say that the original copies I had didn't have great production, or so I thought, but the remastering of this one alone is phenomenal. It sounds so much better than it did back in the day. If this is an album that you've got an old copy of and you want to hear it really, really good, pick up this. These are the Universal Japan reissues that are remastered, and they're domestic prices, so they're like $13.99, $14.99 to get them. You get them on Amazon, you get them from your local store. So even though they reproduce the Japanese booklets, the OBI strips, everything, they're only, domestic price. And I love that Universal Japan has done that. And they're not imports. You actually can get them domestically. Universal Japan has released them domestically, and so people are importing all these Japanese pressings of stuff, which is a very cool thing. So not only has it got a nostalgia thing to it, but you're getting some of these long out-of-print albums, and two great ones from Exodus. This happened to be my first Exodus album on cassette back in the day, so it was great getting this, but this was a little more of the groove metal style stuff. This is the full-on thrash that we know and love them for. And of course, so is the live show, which was done just before this release here on the Fabulous Disaster Tour, I think it was. Okay, so last week in the What Just Dropped series, I know lots and lots of stuff that I found based on that. I showed you guys a vinyl version of this, Mayhamic Destruction. And I don't know if this came out before or was at the same time, but I think this might have been earlier, like 2023 or something like that. And somebody said to me, hey, there is a CD reissue of the debut album by Mortal Sin. And I didn't know of it. I wasn't aware of it. I only saw that vinyl reissue of it. And I was going to order that, and I'm glad that I didn't jump on it right away, because by the time that person notified me of this, I went and I took a look, and while I couldn't get, I don't know if it's in print anymore, and that's the thing, it wasn't available to buy like directly through Amazon. I bought it through a third-party marketplace, a reseller. It was still a new copy when it arrived. But I was able to get one. So I was super excited about that. Mortal Sin at least only made two classic thrash metal albums. This debut in Face of Despair, which I also showed you guys last week when I was referencing this during the What Just Dropped series. And really glad to get it, but definitely like Face of Despair way more than this. This didn't bowl me over, but I'm glad to have it in the collection. And who knows, at some point this one will maybe sound better to me than the other one, but I love filling in those gaps in my collection. And so while I was on, listening to the Cobra and the Lotus stuff, I had recently been noticing, I'm spacing on the guy's first name, Orlando is his last name. He's the guitar player in this band. And I'm going to find his name real quick before Mike Orlando. Okay, so Mike Orlando has recently been part of two new groups, Sonic Universe, which has Corey Glover of Living Color in it, and I believe they've had to change their name to just Corey Glover's Universe. So it's out there now if you're looking for it under that. Mike Orlando is part of it. And then recent new project that he's doing, and the name escapes me, but he's doing it along with John Bush from Anthrax. And so that's out there. And it really made me take note of him and want to go back and visit the first project that at least brought him to my attention, which was Adrenaline Mob. And I've got the debut album and the covers EP, but I didn't go any further with the second album. I don't know if this is the third or fourth, but I picked this up at Sound Exchange and really enjoyed it. I have to say it's mostly the vocalist that didn't keep me into the group, but re-listening to it now from Mike Orlando, enjoying it much more. And so I then ordered this because this is the only one that's still in print. I could get that. So I was fleshing out the catalog of Adrenaline Mob, and hopefully those guys will continue and make a new album. But if you don't know, I don't know, about 5 years back or so, they had pulled over to the side of the road to change a tire, and a tractor trailer hit their van or bus and killed, I think it was the bass player, the road manager, heavily injured the guys in the band. And unfortunately, they haven't done anything since then. I'm sure they're still trying to get their bearings and figure out what they want to do. But as far as I know, the band is still together. They have not officially broken up or anything like that. But the guys, of course, are all out doing other projects. So don't know that we'll be seeing anything more from Adrenaline Mob. But I am happy that Mike Orlando is out there doing these other projects, because it's certainly putting him in a new light for me. He is a shred monster on the guitar, and he's getting out playing more than just the style of Adrenaline Mob. If you check out what he's doing under Sonic Universe, Corey Glover's Universe, that stuff really, really blew me away, because it's less of the modern day metal sound and more of the throwback metal sound that we all know and love. Okay, so I also found this Ozzy Osbourne 10 Commandments. I was so excited to find this. This was the one hole in my Ozzy Osbourne collection of official released albums that I don't have. It's long out of print. It's a 10-track best of. There's nothing unreleased on this or anything that you wouldn't already have, but just for a completist like me. And I remember this, I think one of my friends had it on cassette or something. So it is one of those things that is ingrained in my mind, even though I didn't own it, as something that I need to own, because I remember it as being part of the collection from back in the day. And it's long since been replaced by better collections, but all in all, very cool to get it. And I gotta say, just the order of the tracks and the fact that it's the old school stuff, I think it stops before, definitely stops before No More Tears. It might even stop before, I'm trying to think if it's got, yeah, it doesn't have anything like Crazy Babies on here. So even though it says 1990, this might not have anything from the Zakk Wylde era on here. I don't know offhand. Maybe one of these tracks that I'm not familiar with has him on it, but it doesn't have singles like Crazy Babies on here. But we get Flying High Again, Crazy Train, Diary of a Madman, Shot in the Dark, Thank God for the Bomb, Bark at the Moon Tonight, Little Dolls, Steal Away the Night, and So Tired. So those are the 10 tracks, if that means anything to you. And then, I'm always into a little prog here and there. Showed you guys the Prog Collective. So I picked up 2 Rick Wakeman releases. This Best Of, which is a Japanese only release, but it's of his stuff from the, I guess from his original release, because we do get stuff on here from the 8 Wives of Henry VIII, or the 7 Wives of Henry VIII, however many it is. And then you get stuff from generally the Center of the Earth, but you get stuff from the 80s up through the early 90s. So this is the only collection that I know that actually spanned up through his 70s era work, from that up through the 80s into the 90s. It doesn't cover all the releases, but it just is a much better variety of stuff than if you pick up the greatest hits packages that generally only focus on the middle to late 70s, very early 80s, and doesn't go into any of this stuff. And one of the albums that I didn't know anything about from him, Silent Night, and one of those tracks does appear on here, but this is an album that's totally run under the radar for me that I didn't know anything about, and I got that. So adding in 2 Rick Wakeman things to the collection always puts a smile on my face. This one here is with vocals, but it's always interesting because you never know whether you're going to get a Rick Wakeman album that is with vocals or without vocals. And I much prefer the instrumental stuff that he does. But again, you don't know whether you're going to get piano, you're going to get, the Moog synthesizer, you're going to get, keyboard, or you're going to get instrumental, or whatever you're going to get. Well, so I really like a particular sounding style of Rick, and it's kind of about every 3rd release or so. And so this happens to be one that is with the vocals, but in the style that I like, the more rock style stuff with keyboards. So that was really cool. And then this compilation happens to collect up that sounding stuff. So that's where those 2 come from, at least. And the last thing to show you guys was what I did a separate video on, so I didn't want to go into it in a whole lot of detail, but the Thunder Mother box set that I picked up from Music Connection that has the shirt in it. It's got the glasses. It has the CD for Heatwave and all the other cool stuff. So I picked that up. But if you want to see this whole thing, I have done a full unboxing of this thing that goes through all the cool memorabilia and stuff in it. And I will leave a link in the description for that particular item, and you can see that. But glad to get a hold of that because that was an out of print album for me, and it was keeping in line with the newer bands doing the modern but throwback hard rock and metal sounding stuff. Thunder Mother, another all-female band, along with all those other ones that I picked up. And that's just where my mindset has been. And as you guys know, this video, which posts on Wednesdays, I usually do film it a little bit early here. I'm still on vacation. I'm still hitting up music stores. And at the end of this week, I'm supposed to be heading to Poughkeepsie, New York to hit 2 brand new record stores that I've never been to. Rock Fantasy and Dark Side Records. And I'm supposed to be doing those with Pete Pardo, so we'll see. Hopefully that'll stay on the books. It's a tentative at the moment, but should I actually make that trip and hit those, you will be seeing Let's Go to the Record Store videos on those. And then tune in next week for my finds from those brand new record stores. All right, everyone, take care, have a good one, and I'll talk to you real soon. Bye-bye.